They thought I'd be licking my wounds. Instead, I was blueprinting their replacement. The morning after I landed, I met with Louise Mata again, but this time, not in a Next Forum conference room. It was a private breakfast in a São Paulo cafe she had picked. No legal team, no pleasantries, just her COO, and me. "We already moved our data to your framework," she said, sipping her espresso. "Everything's clean. It works." That moment hit me harder than the firing email ever did. Because now it was real. It wasn't just an idea in a secret Google Drive, it was a living thing. Trayvon was alive. My name is Connor Delaney. I'm 39 years old, born in Allentown, Pennsylvania. For a decade, I built a kingdom for men like Grayson Hart to put their names on. Now, I was building one with my own. That week, I barely slept. There were follow-up calls from London, a redraft from Tokyo, back-end migrations in progress. I had to rent a temporary suite just to stay above the noise, physically and mentally. Next Form tried damage control. I know because one of their project managers called me by mistake. She thought I was still on board. "Just looping you in for the Eurocom briefing," she said. I didn't correct her. I listened. They were flailing, trying to patch the holes I'd already built tunnels through. By the end of the month, Trayvon had closed 3 contracts. Not signed, closed, finalized, deposits cleared, systems integrated, no balloon launches, no social media blitz. In just execution. Mallory tried to spin it, posted a carefully crafted LinkedIn update. Proud to lead international strategy at Next Form during a time of bold evolution. I took a screenshot and moved on. Because here's the thing, no one tells you about revenge. If you're still staring back at what burned, you miss what's rising. I wasn't out to torch Next Form. I was out to obsolete it. Clients stopped returning Grayson's calls. Internally, they started pointing the fingers. One of my old colleagues texted, "They're sniffing for saboteurs. Funny thing is, you were the glue." That made me pause. I'd always known they undervalued me. But until then, I didn't realize how terrified they were without me. By Q2, Trayvon had replaced 7 of Next Form's core partnerships. Not by stealing, by offering clarity. While they scrambled for lawyers and NDAs, we offered clean code and timelines that held. I could have issued a statement, could have gone on record. But silence was stronger. The final nail came via courier. A letter, not from a client, but from Grayson himself. Printed, signed, apologetic, asking to discuss mutual terms. I didn't respond. Instead, I scanned it, saved it under a folder named Relics, and got back to work. I used to joke that I wasn't just part of the foundation at Next Form. I was the foundation. What I didn't say out loud was that it wasn't a joke. My name never made the headlines, but when contracts were bleeding, when lawsuits were looming, or when a deal started to die mid-signature, I was the one they called. Not legal, not BD. Me, the last time they truly needed me, I mean white-knuckle, do-or-die needed me, was on a Tuesday morning 3 years ago. A $400 million merger was on fire, and nobody could figure out how to clean it up. Legal was spinning its wheels. Sales was throwing up prayers. I sat down with both decks, rewrote the entire client-side integration plan in 20 minutes, and turned the meeting around with 3 slides and a whiteboard. Not only did we save the deal, we expanded it, tacked on another $60 million over 3 quarters. No one clapped. 2 days later, I got an email from Grayson's EA. "Lunch next week. CEO 1.1. Congrats on the recovery." We met in the executive lounge. He shook my hand across the table like I was some golden retriever that had fetched a bone on command. "I always knew you had it in you," he said, like he was the one who taught me. I paid for my own damn lunch. There was always talk of promotion, whispers, promises in the hallway. "We're restructuring soon. We're carving out a strategic VP role. Just hang tight. It's coming." It never came. Then one day, I overheard something I wasn't supposed to. It was at an offsite in Boston. Lunch break. I'd stepped outside to take a call, and when I came back in, I passed by an open door where 3 board members were sitting with Grayson. They didn't see me. I wasn't supposed to be there yet. Someone said, "He's great, but he's too much. He talks first, owns the room. The others won't speak if he's there." Grayson chuckled. "Exactly. That's why we keep him just under the glass. Use him, don't elevate him. They didn't want to promote me. They wanted to preserve the illusion of control, keep the senior staff from being threatened, keep their precious hierarchy unshaken. I walked away before they could see me standing there. That was when it clicked. I wasn't being overlooked. I was being managed. Everything I'd taken as bad luck, the stalled titles, the raises that never matched the wins, the not the right time conversations, it wasn't oversight. It was design. I wasn't paranoid. I was just finally hearing what they'd been too polite to say out loud. Useful, not powerful. Loud, not leadership material. The guy who fixes the plane mid-flight, but never gets to sit in the cockpit. They were scared I'd outshine the people who were born into those chairs. Scared I'd take the room. And you know what? They were right to be scared, because the thing they never figured out, the thing that kept me underestimated for 9 years, was that I wasn't playing their game. I was building my own. They boxed me in. So I started drawing a door. Mallory Hart walked into the office like she was doing the building a favor. She had the kind of confidence that didn't come from achievement. It came from immunity, like someone had stamped "Do Not Touch" across her resume before she ever showed up. Her title was Strategic Innovation Liaison, which meant absolutely nothing. No scope, no KPIs, just vague access to everything. Grayson introduced her at a leadership sync with a proud little smirk. "Fresh perspective," he said. "Younger eyes, we could all use a shake-up." No one questioned it. You don't question the CEO's daughter. Her second week, she showed up to a client sync 15 minutes late and made a joke about still being on New York brain time, even though we were all in New York. Her third week, she asked me what a staging environment was. I didn't laugh. I explained it. Slowly, then came the breach. It started with a quiet Friday email from legal. Subject line, urgent, client data. Incident. Mallory had accidentally shared a dev environment link with an unsecured vendor. That link led to a dashboard filled with sensitive prototype models. Telnova noticed it because someone in their compliance team got a Google alert ping on one of their code names. If it had gone public, it could have nuked the relationship and tanked our entire Latin America pipeline. Grayson called me at 7 to 12 p.m. that night. "I need this cleaned up by morning," he said. No apology, no explanation. Just an order. I stayed in the office until 2:40 a.m., rewrote the access protocols, created a dead link trail to make it look like a permissions issue, called in a favor from our AWS contact to trigger an audit delay. By sunrise, the logs were patched, the risk was contained, and Telnova had accepted our explanation. Grayson called again at 8:03 a.m. "Appreciate your discretion," he said, then added, "She's young, she'll learn." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Sure. Mallory never said thank you. She didn't even look up from her phone the next Monday. A couple weeks later, I opened our shared drive to review a pitch deck I'd built from scratch. One that had gotten internal buy-in from 2 regions and was now being prepped for rollout. I clicked on the file, and there it was. The exact same deck, same visuals, same framework, same notes in the speaker script. Except one thing had changed. The author line at the top had been swapped. Her name, Mallory Hart. I stared at the screen for a full minute, hand resting on my mouse, feeling every cell in my jaw tighten. I didn't say a word. Not because I was afraid. I'd dealt with worse. I could have called her out in front of the entire senior team. I could have forwarded the original version with timestamps and a snide little FYI, but I didn't. Because I knew how the story would go, I'd get labeled the aggressive one. The threat, the guy who made things tense. She'd cry in someone's office, say she didn't know, that it was a misunderstanding, and I'd lose twice. So I let it sit. And right there, in that moment of silence, I made a quiet decision. One that would change everything. I would never cover for her again. Not because of pride, because of strategy. Covering for her once was loyalty. Covering again would have been stupidity. Later, I found out through someone in HR that Grayson was floating her name for a regional strategy lead role, the same role I had informally been doing for 2 years. I wasn't just being bypassed, I was being replaced, and not by talent, by lineage. The day I started building Trayvont, No one knew, not my manager, not HR, not even the few people I brought in early. I didn't say a word. I didn't change my schedule. I didn't start showing up late or working from cafes like some cliché founder in disguise. I still showed up to work at Next Form every morning, badge still active, laptop still logged in, calendar still full. But at night, I built the thing that would gut them. It started small. 2 people. Jamal, an architect they'd pushed out after a failed redesign that wasn't his fault, and Danny, a compliance lead who took the fall for a VP's mistake. Both brilliant, both underused, both still carrying the scars of being politely discarded. We met on Sundays, rented a co-working pod downtown. No branding, no hashtags. Just 3 people who knew how things should work. We didn't talk about revenge. We talked about structure. How to build something without the rot. How to create a system that didn't drown smart people in politics. How to do the things we'd been doing for years, only better, faster, and with no one overhead to sabotage it mid-flight. And slowly, we built Trayvont. No press, no funding announcements, no startup theater, just documents.frameworks. Quiet deals with vendors who'd been burned by Next Form's nonsense and were hungry for something different. I didn't even quit. I stayed at my desk, the same one they'd stuck me in after reorg number 7. I took the calls, cleaned up messes, helped Mallory prep for board decks she didn't understand, smiled at meetings, took notes in Google Docs, and while they were patting themselves on the back for surviving another quarter, I was laying the steel for what came next. The more they overlooked me, the more invisible I became, and the more I could do. They gave me access, context, time, and I used every bit of it. I had one document, air-gapped, encrypted, 3-layer auth, where I listed every broken thing they'd ever forced me to fix, the flawed onboarding protocols, the awful offshore vendor that kept leaking client PII, the Frankenstein codebase that no one wanted to admit needed a rewrite, the partnership structure that caused more churn than it solved. We rebuilt all of it. From scratch, no glue, no fluff, no theater, just clean systems that worked. And while they were showing off their latest bloated contract win at an internal town hall, I was already redirecting it, quietly, precisely, legally. The biggest deal they'd ever landed? Yeah, that one was already ours. The gala was held at the Century Club in Midtown, one of those high-gloss venues with $300 flower arrangements and valet attendants who made you feel like you owed them an apology for existing. Officially, the night was about celebrating Next Form's strategic growth and future-facing innovation. Unofficially, it was a coronation, Mallory's AD promotion party dressed up in PR. I walked in wearing the same tailored black suit I'd worn to 3 client closings. No need to impress anyone. They already knew who got the job done. The ballroom buzzed with soft jazz and soft lies. Champagne flutes floated through the room like drones. Everyone was smiling, but no one looked relaxed. That was Next Form's version of celebration. Back pats with teeth. Grayson stood on a low stage near the far wall. Mallory was next to him in a white blazer dress, one hand perched awkwardly on his arm like a Barbie in training. He raised his glass and tapped it lightly. "Tonight, we celebrate momentum," he said, "and leadership, and the bright future of Next Form." I took a slow sip of champagne. Dry, too dry. "Some of you may have heard the whispers," he continued, pausing just long enough for them to land. "Well, I'm proud to confirm them. Mallory Hart is taking on an expanded leadership role in international strategy. She'll be shadowing our most trusted advisor," he looked straight at me, "on our upcoming global engagements." The room applauded. I smiled. She wouldn't be going anywhere. I'd made sure of that. A week earlier, I rerouted every booking, changed my internal calendar permissions, flagged her account in our travel vendor system as pending background clearance, which was total fiction, of course, but effective. No one checked, they never did. By the time Grayson made that announcement, the seat she thought she'd be taking next to me in business class, it had already been scrubbed. My outbound flight to Tokyo had been shifted up by 12 hours, leaving from a different airport altogether. She had the title. I still had the reins. She didn't even know she was already locked out of the client portal. My final gift before boarding. After the speech, people milled around, pretending they had something to say. Mallory worked the room like a rookie pageant winner, smiling too wide, too often, nodding like she understood half of what people were saying. She passed me once, gave me a little smirk. The kind that says, "You know what this is," and she was right. I did know. I created that role. Not on paper, but in substance. I built the pipeline she was now inheriting. The systems, the reports, the partnerships. She didn't know the back end from a breadcrumb, but she had the title. And in that room, that was all that mattered, except it wasn't. Because I'd already written the next chapter, and she wasn't in it. The truth was, they expected me to be the bridge to her transition, to hand off my credibility like a box of files, to play the part, train the rookie, act like I was proud. But I wasn't interested in being noble or generous. I was done being useful. They thought I'd walk her through the deal? No, I gave her a seat on a plane she'd never board. 10 months of midnight calls, red eyes, half-lost weekends, and burner coffee came down to 10 days. Tokyo, London, Sao Paulo. 3 cities, 3 major players. One shot to change everything. It wasn't a company trip. It was a surgical mission. Mine. Next Form thought I was out there running point on a global expansion strategy. What I was really doing was closing the exits behind them. Quietly, thoroughly, permanently. In Tokyo, I met with the legal head at Eurocom. They'd been dancing around a compliance gap for years, patching it with fluff language no one read. Legal had sent over the same recycled garbage I'd seen 10 times. Useless. So, I rewrote the draft myself, from scratch. 15 pages, bulletproof, no ambiguity, no loopholes. Their lead counsel called it the cleanest draft we've ever received. I nodded. Didn't mention that I had already adapted it into Trayvant's contract model. In London, I took a red eye into a rainstorm, shook hands with their director of infrastructure, and delivered a deployment map we weren't supposed to have until Q3. A roadmap Mallory didn't even know existed. Their entire engineering team sat across from me, stunned. One guy actually said, "Wait, you built this?" I didn't correct him, and then came Sao Paulo. The last piece. I met Louise Mata in a glass-walled conference room overlooking the skyline. No assistant, no entourage, just her, me, and the deal on the table. She studied the updated back-end specs I'd handed her, flipping through each page slowly. These weren't next forms, they were cleaner, simpler, more human, less crap. "This isn't what your team sent us 2 months ago," she said. I held her gaze. "It's not, it's what works." She closed the binder and looked at me for a long second. Then she said the line I'd been waiting for. "We trust you, not them." It wasn't anger in her voice. It was clarity, cold and calm. At every stop, every handshake, every so-called check-in, I was doing more than delivering on behalf of Next Form. I was offering a door. No sales pitch, no rebellion, just an alternate path, a better one. They didn't ask about my company name. They didn't need to. They saw the difference and they followed it. Because here's what no one inside Next Form ever understood. Deals aren't closed in boardrooms. They're closed when someone believes you'll pick up the phone at 3 a.m. if the system goes down, that you'll rewrite a failing contract yourself, if you have to, that you won't pass the buck. You'll own it. That's what I gave them, not fluff, not promises. Me. I wasn't negotiating on Next Form's behalf. I was interviewing clients for my next company. And when the contracts finally came in, when the numbers were locked, when the ink dried, the biggest deal in Next Form's history, it never really belonged to them. It belonged to me the second I stopped asking permission to lead. At 2:30 a.m., cruising at 35,000 feet somewhere over the Atlantic, I got the email. Subject: termination of employment. From Grace and Hart. Message: effective immediately. company property and systems access are revoked. No, thank you. No explanation. Just cold clinical execution. I read it twice, blinked, and read it a third time. They didn't even wait for me to land. 2 weeks earlier, Grayson had clapped me on the back after a meeting in Tokyo and said, "No one represents us like you." His exact words. I remember because I'd smiled and said nothing, already knowing he was lying. He always said crap like that before pulling a stunt. But this, mid-air? I stared out the window. Below us was a blanket of cloud cover, smooth, empty. I felt my pulse tighten in my throat. Not fear, not even anger, just confirmation. They thought they'd shut me down with a button. They thought firing me at 2:30 a.m. while I was on a red-eye, cut off from internet and phone, was checkmate. What they didn't know, I was already 5 moves ahead. I reached down, unzipped my carry-on, and pulled out the second laptop. The black one. The one not on any of their asset lists. The one with a hardline key, a separate VPN, and 0 Nextform fingerprints. The one I used to build Trayvant. I opened the lid, waited, a quiet hum, then, connection, secure. All the data, all of it, was mine. Backed up, time-stamped, legally cleared, audited by a compliance lawyer I'd hired months ago, just in case. The client decks, mine. The communication logs, mine. The custom infrastructure frameworks I'd designed personally and anonymized in build logs, mine. They thought they'd erased me. All they'd really done was set me loose. I logged into the Trayvant backend. The portal I'd built had been quietly tested with 3 clients. As of last week, I had soft confirmation from all of them. When I gave the signal, they'd follow. So, I did. I drafted one message, simple, clean. The subject line was, Phase 1, live. 3 recipients. Luiz Mata from Brazil, Henrik Elstad in London, Mariko Tanaka in Tokyo. Message body. As discussed, systems are live, migration begins today. Then I wrote 3 words in my notes. Let's begin. It didn't feel like revenge, it felt like gravity, pulling what was already mine back where it belonged. By the time the plane touched down, the shock had worn off. I didn't feel fired, I felt free. Grayson must have thought the silence meant I was gone. He fired me mid-air. No call, no confrontation, just a digital bullet sent from a desk too cowardly to face me. He figured I'd land, panic, and vanish. Instead, I landed, logged in, and watched the first domino fall. By 10:12 a.m., São Paulo time, the Telnova team had accessed Trayvant's private portal. No fireworks, no drama. Just a quiet login success from Luiz Mata's account. At 11:03, I got an alert from our London node. Eurocom's secure backend had pinged our endpoint twice. They were testing integrations. By noon, both were live. That was when the panic started. Grayson called the Telnova line 5 times. Louise didn't answer. She didn't need to. She'd already answered with her login. Someone from Nextform's comms team reached out to Eurocom for a joint announcement. Eurocom responded with one sentence. "We're not aligned with your timeline." And just like that, the tether was cut. Mallory tried the softer route. Relationship building. She fired off an email to a shared distro list, thanking the clients for their partnership, and looking forward to continued collaboration. Nobody replied. Then I got a call from someone still at Nextform, a quiet guy in product who owed me more favors than he could count. He didn't even say hello. "They're freaking out," he whispered. "Legal's digging through everything. Compliance is running audits. Grayson's demanding answers no one has." I almost felt bad. Almost. What they didn't understand was that there wouldn't be a scandal. No headline, no smoking gun, just quiet, suffocating absence. The trust had shifted, the power had shifted. But the silence, that was the part that crushed them. Because without a war to fight, they had no way to explain the loss. No memo, no spin. Then, late in the day, I got the message that sealed it. A short email from Telnova's general counsel. Effective immediately. Nextform Technologies is no longer authorized to speak or act on our behalf. All matters should be directed to Trayvant Systems under the leadership of Connor Delaney. No noise, Just a clean clinical transfer of power, the kind of shift you don't see coming until the lights are already out. Munich was cold that week, not weather cold, but corporate cold. Hotel lobbies filled with logos and forced smiles. Business cards passed like poker chips. Every conversation was a pitch disguised as small talk. The Global Tech Summit wasn't just a conference. It was a stage, and Grayson was banking on it to clean up the mess. I hadn't planned to go, but when I heard they were flying in with a strategic partnership reveal, I booked my ticket that night. Not through Nextform, not through Trayvont. Just a quiet personal invite from someone on Merrick's team, a global infrastructure firm with a 7-figure appetite and zero tolerance for fluff. Grayson arrived loud, full PR kit, Mallory beside him, trailing 2 junior staffers in matching navy blazers. They set up near the back of Hall C, their deck on a massive screen with Nextform Recalibrating Global Trust stamped across the top. I slipped in through the side door 5 minutes before showtime. No badge, no entourage, just results. They didn't see me at first. I waited. Merrick's director of development, a sharp guy named Oscar Finch, walked on stage and gave a brief intro. "Today we'll be reviewing proposals from 2 separate vendors," he said, scanning the crowd, "including a late-stage submission from a firm many of you haven't heard of yet, but probably will." He looked right at me and gave the smallest nod. Grayson froze. Mallory's hand twitched toward her phone. I stepped forward and took the mic. "I won't take much of your time," I said. "We rebuilt the back-end model from scratch. No legacy dependencies, no fluff, just cleaner code, modular integrations, and real delivery dates. What's on our deck is already live. Not a roadmap, not a dream, live." Then I clicked to the next slide. Just specs, no branding. The silence in the room was the kind that only comes when people are processing truth. Oscar turned to both of us. "Let's cut to it. We like the work. But there's one issue." He looked at Grayson. "Our condition for moving forward is simple," he said. "We want the tech, but not the politics." Grayson stiffened. "What exactly are you saying?" Oscar didn't blink. "You step back, or we walk." For once, Grayson didn't argue. He just looked down at the floor, then back at Mallory. Then, without a word, he picked up his tablet and left the room. Mallory followed 2 steps behind. No eye contact, no spin. I didn't gloat, didn't smirk. I simply closed my laptop and thanked the room. That was the moment I stopped being the guy they fired. That was the moment I became the guy they couldn't replace.